It's been a while since I uploaded a video, and I'm very happy to get back and sharing knowledge and observation with you guys. So today, I'm going to publish in this video a conversation that I had with Sandi Besen, which is a AI research engineer at IBM. I stumbled upon her content in LinkedIn. She has great content, and I'm obviously going to share the URL to her profile in the video description. And I really liked her perspective and updates and what she's doing in terms of AI and agentic workflows. So I decided to reach out to her. And if you guys have seen my latest videos, some of them were just interviewing people who are actually building agents in production, because there is a huge gap, a huge knowledge gap, and a few more gaps at the moment between people who actually build agents for production, which if you've been following me for a while, you know that it's pretty hard because agents are not so reliable. And on the other side of the spectrum, a lot of people are promising, over promising regarding agents' capabilities, and in my opinion, this is less interesting. So this is why it's so important for me to find people who are actually building and actually seeing agents that are really working in production. And this is what this whole conversation is about. I'm sure that you will enjoy it. It's like 30 minutes long. We go very broad and about discuss many interesting topics. And yeah, I hope you will enjoy it. And let's get started. Hi, Sandy. How are you?
Good. How are you, Yaron?
I'm excellent. Oh, you see, you pronounced it well.
I tried my hardest there.
It was excellent, excellent. I'm very excited to have you. I actually think I've been kind of stalking you in LinkedIn. I saw your post, and it's a very interesting post. And then I stumbled upon one of your conversation. I think it was in either in the LangChain channel or in the Pipe Drive channel, or not Pipe Drive, Open Pipe.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely the open pipe one.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a fascinating conversation. So I said I have to reach out to her and discuss with her about agents. So I'm very excited to have you.
But thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity and to chat for a while with you.
Cool, cool, excellent. So for people, I mean, we will dive into everything in a moment, but before we do so, maybe give a bit of context. You know, everything today is context engineering. So maybe give us context, a bit of context, and then we will dive into like my question, and we will have this cool conversation about building reliable agents.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I'm gonna steal that for our stand up. So I'm gonna be like, here's my context engineering for for the situation. Instead of just saying context. But yeah, so I'm Sandy. I work for IBM Research. I'm part of a group called Product Incubation, where our main goal is to take kind of forthcoming ideas. We run a lot of experiments as to what works, what sticks. And that ranges the gamut from user experience things to deep tech, and normally combining those two things as we think about product. And so our most recent project that we're working on is an open source project called BAI.
Mhm.
And it's really two separate components meant for the enterprise developer. There's a framework that is meant to build reliable enterprise agents.
Mhm.
And then there's the platform piece where you can take your agent that you built in the framework or an agent built in any other framework and build a simple interface or web interface to share with other people. So, I mean, this came from um, problems that we were having as a group and I'm having individually, right? Where I'm a data scientist, I'm not a full stack developer. Although I've had to learn kind of how to be a full stack developer as all of our skills are changing now. But building the agents is kind of my MO. Creating the UI for it never has been, right? But I don't want to share a script with someone. I can't share a script with someone who can't run it, right? So how do we actually get into the hands of users to get feedback for me, testing, even just a runnable interface to share in my agent? So that's the two problems we're trying to solve for enterprise.
Excellent. And before like double clicking on this, like a kind of a general question, I always ask myself, and it's an interesting opportunity because you work for IBM. what do you assume is the gap between what you guys are working on and what is the public exposed to? Like,
Mm.
Dario Amodei or Sam, they always say people don't understand what's coming. So I'm wondering, do they already have like GPT-7 at home? So I'm because you're probably exposed to this kind of stuff in IBM. So I'm wondering what's the delta between what you're shipping and what we're consuming, the retail users.
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. I think that gap is shortening and shortening, especially as we kind of enter this. There's a couple elements to that. One is the open source piece, right? Is we're building in the public,
Mm-hmm.
especially for this project we're currently working on, and what's becoming more of a trend is the open source technology, um, which I'm all here for.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so you're being exposed incrementally to all the changes that are being made because they're being made in the open. So the public is getting access a lot quicker than they used to, because in proprietary products, right, you kind of wait till things are hardened and ready, versus now we have all this experimental things out there, which can lead to problems too, right? Because the reliability piece where, you know, a lot of stuff's out there that's brand new, but it might not be you might need to still validate it. There's still lots of things that as a user you need to understand when using it.
Mhm.
It's not just a out of the box product that's ready to go.
Yeah.
So I think that timeline is shortening. And in some ways, the open source is also contributing to kind of an arms race, right?
Yeah.
So even for companies that aren't open source, we're seeing right now, right, a lot of models come out of China
Mhm.
that are strong open source models. And so that's almost putting upward pressure
Mhm.
on the big labs that are closed, right? Like OpenAI, like Anthropic. Meta's more in the open, but to an
Mhm.
extent on Meta and Google,
Yeah.
to push their things out faster because it's becoming available in an open source version very shortly after it's
Mhm.
getting released closed source.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. That's very interesting. And when I got hooked on AI, I started noticing these open source projects emerge. And before I wasn't involved in the GitHub space, so I didn't really know like the open source space, and it seemed weird
Yeah.
at the beginning. But as soon as you dive into this, you understand all the advantages of building open source. And you mentioned a few, and I definitely see. I mean, your explanation is great because it does incrementally expose the retail user to what's going on. So I definitely agree. And now I want to shift back to what you said before, and this is going to be like the last hard transition that we are going to make. You said enterprise agents and or enterprise users, and I wanted to hear from you what, based on your observation, what is the difference between the requirements of the enterprise users and let's say SMBs, solopreneurs, etc. Yeah, I'm sure there are many, but I'm curious to hear your observation.
Yeah. There are many. I think the
Uh,
biggest comes down to that reliability piece.
mhm,
And what differentiates a framework that's built specifically with enterprise in mind and one that isn't is one that has a lot of those aspects built into the framework. So, not to say that any framework can't be made enterprise ready and enterprise hardened, right? But you have to build a lot of those custom pieces on top of the framework. And that's fine. It's just more work, right? Versus a framework that has been built with enterprise in mind, has some of those controls built into it. And I'm speaking about controls like we have a new feature that we just rolled out in the BAI framework that has the ability to set kind of conditional logic for when tools are used.
mhm,
So unlike certain frameworks that you either need to like explicitly define all of that in the orchestration,
mhm,
and then it's very rigid, right? It's like this is called if that.
mhm,
There's actual conditions that we can set to our tools that allow the agents to use their own reasoning ability, but
mhm.
also have requirements for
Uh-huh.
maybe how many times a tool must be called, or the tool must be called after this tool is called. And so it kind of allows you to shape your architecture and your agentic system in
Mm-hmm.
a way that fits your use case,
Mm-hmm.
but without having to build all of that logic from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Uh, from what you've built recently or what you've been researching, what do you feel is like a very significant lever? For example, what you mentioned now, do you feel it's one of the most significant levers, or like one of the most missing parts in frameworks, or is there anything else that comes to mind? Let me perhaps frame this question again. So you mentioned something that sounds very useful, but I'm wondering if you just gave it as an example because it was top of mind, or do you have any other examples of like very nuanced ways to build a better framework?
Yeah. Um, well, build a better framework is a big topic,
Yeah,
but
for
like
sure. But
I think to make the framework more reliable for enterprise, it's like I think there are certain aspects that we're also looking to build in now around like different patterns that you can associate, and these are patterns that are also in some of the non-enterprisey frameworks as well. But it's more just, I guess, having these components abstracted into the framework where it's accessible for the developer to use. So, for instance, having this LLM as judge or validation or human in the loop, making that very easy for the developer to implement
uh-huh.
makes it easier to have an enterprise-ready framework because the developer doesn't have to build in the LLM as judge or human in the loop element into the framework. It's already available with just like a little bit of configuration.
Uh-huh. I see. Interesting. Um, I just had a podcast a few days ago, also interviewing someone from the AI space. And I told him that I'm very excited about evals and LLM as a judges. And he said that he's mostly excited about memories. And he thinks that
Oh
memories
yeah.
are very important. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear, you don't have to judge who's correct, but I'm curious to hear let's say we break down all the elements of an agentic workflow. What are you most excited about? Like the evals, the memory, adding useful guardrails, anything specific that comes to mind? I know it's a very vague question, but
Yeah, there's a few things that excite me. They're all important. It depends on what you're trying to do,
mhm,
right? If you ask, uh, like you said, it depends on what's top of your mind. What are you
uh,
currently working on? What's
mhm,
exciting you
yeah,
most? From the things that I have been working on and reading, there's one approach that's starting to emerge, and this goes along the lines of your previous guest that talked about memory. It's becoming very common now to store memories in databases,
mhm,
in vector stores, and retrieve them when relevant using retrieval.
mhm,
Retrieval is now kind of a core part of agents.
uh-huh,
It used to be this thing where like even like 4 months ago, everyone's trying to figure out RAG, and now if you haven't figured out RAG, you are now behind, which is crazy. Um, but there's a kind of new approach that's emerging called self-reflection.
mhm,
Um, and it's basically when the LLM can generate lessons learned what from a task, completing a task, and when it something that allowed it to help complete the task or something where it failed to complete the task and why it failed to complete the task. So it does self-reflection on its approach.
mhm,
And then it stores that as a memory.
yeah,
And so next time it receives a similar type of task, it can pull relevant memories using some sort of retrieval. And that will help it long term. So I think that's a kind of new
yeah,
approach that's emerging. And it's not a new concept,
mhm,
but it's just becoming popularized now, and I think that will um, enhance the self-learning capabilities of an agentic system, which is a hot topic. I was thinking about this like earlier this week that self-learning systems have been something that we have been talking that we have
mhm,
for the last many years, maybe 5 years. And that's not false. It's true. In some respect, we had self-learning systems, but what a self-learning system actually means and how it's able to be implemented has changed drastically. And I think this will be a big step in actually a truly self-learning system where even those memory slash task pairs models can be fine-tuned on. And then we can have truly bettering systems. And I think we're working on our way there. So that's something that's currently exciting me is we're in a little bit of a fine-tuning craze, but I think there are methods that will help us get there that lead to these self-learning systems.
Uh-huh. Interesting. And speaking of crazes, there are there's a lot of fluff out there. So, is there anything that you've been like trends that you've been seen emerging that you I wouldn't say completely ignore, but you think are bound to die or kind of irrelevant? I'll give you an example. Um, I kind of said there's no point in using no code or low code tools like drag and drop tools because everything is going to move to natural language, you know. So this is just an example, but
Yeah.
obviously it's not necessarily relevant. But do you feel that some like there's people hyping something that is kind of irrelevant and you completely ignore, or not completely ignore, almost completely ignore?
Yeah, that's a
What annoys you in the agentic space?
what annoys me, they just say. I don't think it's something that annoys me, but I think it's something that we're starting to see be a major problem where I'm starting to gauge usage of tools or usage of companies
Mhm.
um, based on basic, do they I don't want to call the word rapper has a derogatory
Uh-huh.
meaning now where it and that's not how I mean it. I don't mean it as a derogatory meaning, but for instance, Windsurf is a really good example
Mhm.
of a company that was absolutely rocketing.
Mhm.
And then they got their access to Claude Code cut off, and all of a sudden they tanked
Mhm.
like in a very short period of
Yeah.
time. So I think there's a lot of power now in having um, less reliance
Mhm.
on the large closed source, particularly closed sourced
Yeah.
um, LLM providers.
Mhm.
Because if your entire product and the crux of your product is built off of their capabilities with, you know, added use cases and vertical integration and just all sorts of things, um, I think you're hinged too closely onto them. So I would say it's not something to ignore, but it's something that when I use tools now, after that, I think about, right? Like, is this just built on this and therefore like maybe I shouldn't invest my time in learning this because I
Yeah.
think that's going to go away and we're seeing Anthropic restrict access to a lot of companies
Yeah.
now,
Mhm.
including OpenAI. They're just having like a civil war right now on what's going on. And so that's something that it's kind of in my purview.
Uh-huh.
Maybe that didn't directly answer your question, but
No, but
that's
it's an excellent point. I definitely relate because it takes time to get to know a tool, and there's a lot of like tools are emerging every day now, and we should be very cautious. I mean, it's always exploration versus exploitation. On one hand, you want to become better in a certain tool, but if a tool emerges and it seems like a better tool, so you also want to explore it. But what you're suggesting, and I definitely agree with this hypothesis, that it makes a certain sense. It's that it's very probable that the tools who are provided or built with their own proprietary algorithm and are close to the host, which are like Anthropic and OpenAI, it makes more sense to invest your time in learning these instead of learning other tools that are like derivatives or wrappers. Yeah, it makes a lot
Yeah,
of
or unless those companies are using open source models, in which case that
sense.
they, host their own inference and they're not going to have restrictions in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I also had this belief, and I tend to agree. But I heard this interview with I think it was the CEO of Windsurf or Cursor, and he said that their whole goal is always being incrementally better than Anthropic or OpenAI. So Windsurf has to be only 1% better.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, and then I felt at ease working with Windsurf because but now Cloud Code is just way, way better in my opinion. So I just work with Cloud Code in Windsurf, but I find myself not using Windsurf anymore. I'm just basically using Cloud Code 100%.
Yeah, then you touched on an interesting topic, which is the evolution of these companies from purely consumer products. Like GPT started out as purely a consumer product, and now we're seeing OpenAI move into the enterprise space with enterprise offerings. And vertically aligned offerings. They
Mhm.
just released their, or they're talking about, I can't remember if they released or they're talking about releasing their study mode.
I don't know.
Um,
I haven't seen it.
and yeah, and so I haven't used it, so I'm not sure if it's been released yet. But basically, to address this issue of not wanting to use AI assisted tools for schooling,
Hmm.
and like the whole cheating and not learning in the same way. Um, and they're trying to address these things via vertical into use cases.
Hmm.
So they're releasing a study mode that essentially guides you to completing things rather than telling you the answer, which
Yeah.
I think is great. And then we're seeing this starting to come out in terms of their enterprise offerings where Claude Code, it kind of merges the consumer slash enterprise offering, but we're seeing that be used heavily in enterprises.
Hmm. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, when you mentioned the vertical of the study, it kind of felt like, I don't know if what are your political views, and this is not politics, but it's like the difference. It's like it kind of feels like government intervention in a way. So top down versus bottom up. I always believe in bottom up. I'm more of a quote unquote anarchist in a way, and it feels like if I have this hypothesis that if OpenAI will impose guardrails specifically for studying, people won't like that. But obviously, I might be incorrect. But do you get what I mean?
I get what you mean, and I
Uh-huh.
think that students won't like that.
Uh-huh.
But I think institutions, they're opening themselves up to be an institution partner.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to, instead of fight a battle, they're trying to integrate themselves into the institutional thinking,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is smart. It's a smart business move. Clearly, those institutions are not ready
Mm-hmm.
to make the change as quickly as the technology is advancing. And
Mm-hmm.
so let's kind of meet them in the middle where they're at, where they're like, oh, yes, we are aware that we will need to use some AI capabilities because everyone's doing it anyways. So let's at least do it in a way that we're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of institutions and enterprises, I never worked with huge companies, and I'm curious, what are some things? Let's say I start working with an enterprise or an institution. Based on your experience, what are some limitations that will surprise me? Do you think? Like,
Oh.
privacy is obvious, but is there anything that comes to mind that you've been noticing, like a pattern that is emerging among enterprises that you speak with, and they really it's really important for them to have a local model, for example, or latency is a thing. I don't know, anything that is very enterprise related.
Um, I'll think of exactly what you're asking. In the meantime, I have uh recently read this study and I can't remember the name of it, but I will try so you can put it in the show notes or something.
Okay.
That is basically like the almost like the NPS score or how well executives at a company think that AI is going in their company versus the employees at the company.
Uh-huh.
And like that is vastly different.
Oh
And
wow,
so
interesting.
I think that that kind of goes to show that I think to your point, what are things you'd be surprised at an enterprise
Uh-huh.
is the kind of vocalization of a AI strategy and then the actual execution of implementation tends to be a little bit different than what is demonstrated either to the public by via the executives
Mhm.
or even the executives understanding of what has been done at the company.
Uh-huh.
Um, and is probably slightly different from the reality of what has actually been implemented. Um, yeah, and so I think that's kind
That's
of
fascinating.
one.
That's very interesting, actually. Um, yeah, I'll definitely look it up. Do you make it a point like to read research on a daily basis? Do you have like any specific websites that you like?
Oh my gosh, it is so hard to keep up. I think
Exactly.
that if it's one of those things like they say in science that if you feel like you understand it, you clearly don't. And
Uh-huh.
if you um, feel like you don't understand anything going on, you're probably more ahead than you think.
Uh-huh.
I think that's how keeping up with everything is right now. It's just like they opened the floodgates on the amount of research coming out, and then you can specialize into certain areas of research. So what I've been trying to do um, is keep abreast of market movements
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like new products coming out, trends, what's happening with all the large labs, where they're investing money into, but also new research coming out as to like, is there a new type of models that people are experimenting with? Mixture of expert architectures are really catching on. And so is this shift to still increase the context window still the current trend,
Mm-hmm.
or are we moving more to these different types of, MOE
Yeah.
architectures? And so I think I'm trying to split my time.
Uh-huh.
How do I do that? I I actually, there's a couple of things that I'll give a happy shout out to just because I think they're
Cool.
helpful for me.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I follow AI News. It's like a newsletter that gets sent to my inbox every morning, and what it does is it recaps like it's AI generated and it
Uh-huh.
summarizes Twitter or I guess X, Reddit, and I think subs it was like
Okay,
one
one of those.
other,
One of those.
yeah.
Okay.
I only ever get, to be honest, to X and Reddit because
Uh-huh.
after that I'm like, this is too much.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and then I also read TLDR,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really good, like high level
Yeah.
news. And then I dig in if I see an interesting topic from there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also try to keep up to date on archive,
Yeah.
which is where a lot of people post papers.
Yeah.
And there's a site that I can't remember the name of right now, but I have on my bookmarks um, that tells you what papers are hot on
Yeah.
archive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll try to read some of those when I have the time. But yeah, I try to stay relevant, but in reality, like even if I'm spending an hour a day reading research papers and news, um, it's still really hard. And I have to tell myself that I'm like doing my job by keeping up because it's very easy to kind of be like, just jump into your work
Mm-hmm.
because that's what you need to get done that day.
Yeah.
But this is part of your work. And I think it's hard to remember that, but it's necessary.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. And it's also very cyclical. Like in the last month or so, I've been mostly heads down building, not reading any research, not consuming YouTube at all, not seeing any other stuff. And after this sprint, I'll probably just go and see what's up, what's new. And I like this framework. I think I heard it by Tim Ferriss about studying. So you have two types of learning, just in time and just in case.
I
And
like that.
there's a major difference. And so lately I've been doing mostly just in case, and no, just in time. But
Time.
I also want to stay on top of things. So I use Archive, and there's another website which is called like Mark Tech Post, which they basically aggregate all the hottest
Mhm.
research papers as well. And I think because there is so much noise now, when anything is meaningful, it just floats up to you. You know, eventually you will notice it via WhatsApp, or many people will mention it, or just all the YouTubers are going to talk about it, and eventually you will get exposed.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
There's one thing, not to switch topics, but you reminded me of something. I was experimenting yesterday um with the new agents in OpenAI
Hmm.
and specifically their browser use capability. which has been out a little while and incrementally improving. And what sparked this memory was when you saying like it will just float up to me, it will just be exposed to
Yeah.
me. And kind of what I realized while trying, I gave it a very simple task of like find the cheapest banana for my smoothie.
Uh-huh.
Like that's what browser use should be used for because it's not something you can really pull from an API. You need to go actually to like all of the market websites
Yeah.
and see the price of the bananas, right? And so I thought that was a good use case for it. And what I realized really quickly was that a lot of the websites, like Walmart, not to call Walmart out, a lot of other websites
Yeah.
too, but Walmart was the one that I searched for first, and it blocked it.
For sure.
It blocked it because it doesn't allow bots and
Yeah.
scraping, and right? And so I'm like, wow, there just needs to be a fundamental reset
Yeah.
of the way that companies are viewing aggregation and as you know you're a marketing guy
Hmm.
originally, and so I was thinking like this new concept of SEO
Hmm.
is not just SEO to find a web page now. It's now how can I actually advertise my content and make it the most accessible it can be to provide an LLM with context.
Yeah.
um, and I think there's something in that, and it hasn't clicked clearly for companies yet because Walmart is one of the companies that is embracing AI and has for a long time. Their data science team has always been very strong, but clearly they are still blocking
Yeah.
the accessibility for these LLMs to gather information from them, which if they want to be part of the conversation, if they want to be relevant, they should be offering the information to the LLM.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a paradigm shift that needs to happen, and you saying that just reminded me of that.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think Cloudflare was trying to solve this because at the moment they are probably blocking a lot of agents. And they, they operate on many websites, and this is the whole in offering is blocking bots. And now they probably need to shift their strategy.
Totally.
Anyway, I mean, I want to be respectful of your time. We already went above and beyond. It was very interesting. I enjoyed it a lot, and I really appreciate your time. Where can people learn more about you? Reach out.
Yeah, sure. So you easiest way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. My name is Sandi Besen, Sandibesen. And if you drop me a message, I usually respond to everyone when I get a chance, and you can follow me there. I post articles, blogs, tutorials, and just sometimes my random thoughts.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Sandy.
Cool. Thank you so much, Yaron.
Take care. Bye bye.